This is a very, very important gentleman in the body of Christ right now. He is an attorney with Liberty Counsel. In fact, he and his wife founded Liberty Counsel and manage Liberty Counsel, are the directors of this organization. And I'm going to let him tell us some more about it. Would you help me welcome attorney Matthew Staver? Amen. Praise the Lord. Well, Matt, welcome to the white curvy couch.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
On Wednesday Live. And your lovely wife, Anita, is also here with us tonight. Anita is an attorney as well, and she has personally helped me through some things. She's encouraged me, Cheryl, you're a strong woman of God. You can do this. I like that. I like that a lot. I like strong women. We're not intimidated, are we, ladies? We're full of the glory of God. Well, Matt, tell us a little bit about how you founded Liberty Counsel, and then we're going to move into the topic for tonight.
Well, I was pastoring a church before I ended up ever going to law school, and I was in Kentucky, in Lexington, Kentucky. It was 1983, and I didn't know anything about abortion, and there were two people that wanted to display this new documentary that came out. It was called Assignment Life. It was a brand new documentary on abortion. So they wanted to reach the pastors. And they had no idea what was going to be the impact of that showing of that documentary. And so some of the pastors I was part of, a non-denominational group of pastors in Lexington that we met for lunch and did meetings once a month, they invited me to come. So I had no idea. You know, I had just recently graduated from seminary. I knew Greek and Hebrew, Aramaic and Syriac. I had studied French to finished my master's thesis. I had known a lot about the languages, the history, the archaeology, the Bible, but I didn't know about this major issue that was going on in my backyard in my community, that is abortion. I only knew what I read in the media, and I thought that it was maybe a heavy menstrual cycle. It wasn't a human being. I didn't know. I mean, I just looked at the media, and that's the problem with looking at the media.
Right.
They're not going to give you what you need to know. They're not going to give you the truth. So I watched this documentary, and it went through the development of the unborn baby. Back then, there was not the 3D or even 4D ultrasound, of course. So all we had was fetal models. But we also had an April 1965 Life magazine special on the baby from the conception all the way through the second to third trimester. It was amazing photography. And this was Life magazine. There wasn't a lot of magazines back in 1965. Life was a big magazine, and it was large, too.
Right.
On the front cover was a baby in the womb.
Wow.
And it was about the miracle of life in the womb. And some of these photography photos that they put in there were in vitro flash photography. It was very revolutionary for the time. And it was incredible. And they showed that. And they showed an actual abortion, a first trimester abortion. And when I saw that they had to account for every one of the body parts, it was a suction abortion in the first trimester, to make sure all the pieces came out.
Jesus.
You know, there's no denying it. This was a human being. It's just smaller than us. It had the fingers, it had the toes, it had the rib cage, it had the skull with the eyes. It was the entire human being that was just ripped apart. And when I saw that, I was absolutely stunned. It's like, I'm a pastor.
Yeah.
I don't know this.
Yeah.
And so I went down to a called a Right to Life. I didn't even know about Right to Life. Looked it up in the phone book. Called. There was a lady that answered the phone. She was taking the calls in her home. I went there, and I said, I want all these different brochures, everything you have. And I said, do you have Roe versus Wade, the 1973 decision by the Supreme Court? Which, by the way, in 1973, they knew about the 1965 photos. So they weren't ignorant. They intentionally did this. And she said, no, I don't have it, but you can go down to the University of Kentucky Law School. And so that was my first entry into law. And I went down there, asked for Roe versus Wade. The librarian took me to a big stack of books, pulled it off, opened it up. There was Roe versus Wade. I took it to the copier, read it. When I read it, I said, this doesn't make sense.
No.
Because it goes back to all the time of the Greek. It goes back to, you know, the Hippocrates and the Hippocratic Oath. And the Hippocratic Oath, back in the Greek times, before even the birth of Jesus, says that a physician swears an oath not to administer a poison to a woman that would cause an abortion. That's part of the Hippocratic Oath that doctors swear to. And I said, that doesn't make sense. And then they took it all the way down through history, and then all these restrictions on abortion. There was never a time where it was permissible like this. And then you thought, as you're reading the case, well, they're not going to permit it. But then you get to this place and they say, we don't have to determine whether life begins at conception. If we did, that's a question that would change our direction. But we don't have to decide that now. But what they did say is, we don't know where it is in the Constitution. It could be in the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the Ninth Amendment. We don't know where the right is. It could be in the penumbra, the glow, like in an eclipse when the moon goes in front of the sun and it blocks out the sun, and all you see is a glow around the edge. We don't know where it is in any of these constitutional amendments. It's glowing around the edges somewhere, and that's the so-called right to kill your child through all 9 months of pregnancy.
God help
And
us.
that's really what ultimately led me into moving from the pastoral pulpit ministry into the legal ministry.
And you went to Liberty University? Did
Well, no, I went to University of Kentucky.
Okay.
I actually put out a fleece. It wasn't the brightest thing to do, but I said, Lord, I'm going to apply to one law school. If you want me to go to law school and they accept me, I'll go. If not, I'm not going to go, and I'll take that as your cue. So, like, I'm studying. I'm there to take the LSAT. You have to take the LSAT to
Right.
get into law school, right?
Right.
And I am about 5 minutes from the start of the exam. There's a girl sitting in front of me, a girl sitting behind me. A girl sits in front of me. She turns around to the girl sitting beside me, and she says, what LSAT preparation course did you take? And I said, she was talking to this other girl, and I'm thinking, is there an LSAT preparation course? I didn't know. So I thought, oh, this is not good. The exam is starting in about 5 minutes, and I didn't have the LSAT exam course, but I passed the
Of course
LSAT,
you did.
and the Lord opened up the door to go to University of Kentucky Law School, and when I got there, my favorite course was constitutional law.
Of course.
So that's how it all intersected. I got involved with the pro-life movement, and the pro-life movement really intersects law, policy, and your faith. And that integrated that. And, I asked the Lord at one time, Lord, why did you take me through college and seminary and pastoral pulpit ministry, church ministry, and then you directed me to law school? Why didn't you just kind of like short-circuit it? It's a lot of hassle. Why don't you just put me right in the law school? You knew where I was going to be. And now I look back on it and I say, the Lord really prepared me, and He knew
did.
exactly the preparation that I needed.
He did. And you once told me that you and Jerry Falwell Sr. actually developed the School
Liberty
of Law.
University School of Law. Yeah, once I graduated from law school, Anita and I moved down to Orlando, and my first Supreme Court case, by the way, was defending pro-life sidewalk counselors out of Melbourne, Florida, that went to the United States Supreme Court. It was the first case like that in the country to go to the High Court. It was 1994. That's what ultimately changed Anita's direction to ultimately be one that was being called into law as well.
Yeah.
But at any rate, what happened was I was litigating these cases, and I was also in private practice, but we started Liberty Counsel in 1989. And what happened was I began to realize we need judges that understand the law.
Yes.
We need attorneys that understand the law and the Constitution. Respect the Constitution. Don't reinterpret it. Just apply the original intent, the words. Words have meaning. They meant something then, they mean the same thing now.
Correct.
And so I said, you know what? We need to develop a law school that trains lawyers in a biblical worldview, in the rule of law. And so I began having that vision that God put in my heart. One day, I met Dr. Jerry Falwell, and I was talking to him. I said, Dr. Falwell, have you ever thought about starting a law school? He goes, well, in fact, when I started Liberty University in 1971, I always wanted to have the law school as the first professional school that we started. And so that conversation led to eventually the development of Liberty University School of Law. It started in 2004, and then I eventually became dean of the law school from 2006 to 2014 and took it through all the levels of accreditation. Now it is one of the most significant law schools in the country. It is winning competitions across the board.
Yes.
It has one of the highest bar. I'm talking about, you put in Harvard and Yale, and yet at the same time, it's in the top 5% in the nation in bar passage rate. It's amazing what the Lord has been doing through Liberty University School of Law.
I want to brag on Liberty just a minute because our son is a graduate of Liberty University, and we're so proud of him. He has a degree in psychology from Liberty.
Well, Anita has a degree in counseling from Liberty University, a master's degree.
Awesome.
She actually went, she had an undergraduate degree from the University of Kentucky. She came here to a school that I won't name, but it had a history of being Christian.
Yeah.
No longer is.
Hello.
So she's in the first semester of her first year in a counseling program. And halfway through, we're paying a lot of money for the hourly rate. We thought, well, you need to get a Christian education in counseling. And then they started, and this was way back in 2000, actually it would have been 1987, 1987,
okay.
Way back then. And she's in the middle of the semester, and they're saying, well, now when you're talking to somebody who's LGBT or somebody who's homosexual, you can't have any values. You just affirm them, and you help them to be comfortable with them, even though they are not, wanting to be affirmed as a homosexual. You help them to be affirmed and be comfortable with it. And they had to role play that, and she came home one day and said, this is crazy. This is crazy. And so she ended up getting her master's degree in counseling at Liberty University, and then eventually she got her law degree as well here in Orlando at Barry University.
So proud of you, Anita. Well, that transitions us to the topic that I want to discuss tonight. And that topic is cancel culture. You're hearing that all over, right? Cancel culture. Yeah, cancel culture is canceling you and me. It's literally canceling our opinions, our beliefs, and eventually they're not just going to cancel books and certain programs. They're going to cancel you and me. They don't want to just tear down statues. They want to tear down every Christian's belief. And so tonight, Matt, I've asked you to come and discuss H.R. 5, which is called the Equality Act. H.R. 5, the Equality Act. It has now passed the House of Representatives in the U.S. Congress and is now before the Senate.
That's right.
This is a very, very dangerous piece of legislation. It's not just about left or right anymore. It's not about blue states, red states. This is literally good versus evil now. They are pushing the boundaries of perversion beyond anything we could ever comprehend. And so we need some people with legal minds to help us. I believe, Pastor Steve, you said that, was it Tuesday morning in prayer, Linda Markowitz said, it's no longer time just to pray. It's time to act now. See, faith without works is dead. So we got to put our faith to work. So, Matt, I'm going to ask you to expound on this H.R. 5 for us.
Yeah, this is an incredible law. It's the most dangerous law that I've ever seen come from Congress in American history. And
that's saying a lot.
And here's what it does. It takes LGBT and Q, and I want to talk about that, and abortion, makes it a federal right, and it goes to every corner of our lives. No one will be able to escape. Don't think about this as, it's going to affect the florist or the baker or the candlestick maker. And I'm not any one of those, so it's not going to affect me. It's going to affect everybody. We know what L, G, B, and T stand for. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transvestite, which is a person wanting to dress like the opposite sex, or transgender, a person that wants to identify as the opposite sex through even taking hormones of the opposite sex and even surgery to remove healthy body parts like breast and genitalia and so forth. That's transgender. Jesus. Now, what's the Q? According to the Senate bill, the Q stands for queer. That's their words. I'm not saying it. It's their words. Queer used to be a derogatory term, and now it's a term of pride within the LGBTQ community. Now, what does Q stand for? It is anything in addition to lesbian, gay, bisexual, transvestite, transgender. Now, what is that? Anything in addition to that. We already know what LGBT stands for, what it covers, and that's broad enough. Q is standing for queer, and what queer is all of the sexual philias, and there's 549, nearly 550 of these. I won't even go into them because I used to say that it's everything you could imagine, but it's not everything because you could never imagine what these involve. But here's one that's very clear, and we all know about. It's called pedophilia. That is a paraphilia. That's a deviant sexual paraphilia in which you're sexually attracted to and have sexual relations with minors. And the groups that are pushing pedophilia, they've changed the name euphemistically to be a minor attracted person. They say it's just another sexual orientation, ought to be protected. Q includes pedophilia along with the other 550 paraphilias. So listen to this. That's what it covers there. It also covers abortion. It makes abortion a federal right across the country. It overrules every state law, which includes informed consent, parental notification, parental consent, doctor qualifications, hospital requirements that you have to be admitted to be able to have a privilege in a hospital to admit people. It overrides viability, ultrasound, waiting periods, every state law that's out there, including, by the way, from fertilization until birth, anything in between, no restriction, partial birth abortion laws, that's third trimester, dismemberment where you rip and tear in the third trimester, where you literally take a baby in the third or late second trimester and you grab it, and it's basically, the analogy is, and it's very simple to understand this because this is what actually happens. Taking a forceps, stick it in the woman's uterus, you grab a body part, pull it so that it's tight, and then when it's tight, you tear it. Just like you're ripping off a leg from a turkey during Thanksgiving or a chicken. That's your dismemberment and evacuation kinds of abortion. Those are happening today. This would make it legal across the country, Cheryl. I mean, this not only makes it legal, it overrides every law. Parents would never know that their daughter is getting a chemical or a surgical abortion, and they couldn't object. A father would never be able to know, could never object. And so you would also have to have this federally funded under this law. And listen to this, churches and Christian schools are not exempt for the very first time. It covers churches and Christian schools. And you would have to cover this for your insurance company. You're self-insured. You would have to provide insurance to kill children. You remember Little Sisters of the Poor and Hobby Lobby? Yes. They objected to those forced abortion drugs and devices. Yes. They wouldn't have a defense. Why? Because the bill also, listen to this, repeals the Religious Freedom Restoration Act of 1993. Now, let me tell you how radical this is.
Go into that. Yeah.
Senator Schumer was a sponsor of the 1993 Religious Freedom Restoration Act. It was passed in the House unanimously with everyone voting in favor. In the Senate, 97-3. And it was signed into law by President Bill Clinton. It was supported on the one hand by the ACLU and Americans United for Separation of Church and State, and on the other hand by Christian Legal Society and Liberty Counsel. I've never seen a bill supporting religious freedom or any other bill supported by this broad spectrum of coalition of people from all spectrums of political and other ideological beliefs. They came together in 1993 to support and protect religious freedom. This bill says no. You can't use it as a claim or a defense. Churches, sorry, you're done. Religious colleges. What would happen with a non-complying church? Let me tell you how this applies. Obviously, we have moral and biblical reasons why we wouldn't want to discriminate. But let me just look at the law. What you cannot do legally respecting race, you will not be able to do legally respecting anything LGBT and Q and abortion. So obviously, biblically and morally, you wouldn't want to have segregated restrooms, right? Even in your church, no question. You don't want to have this is a restroom for whites, this is a restroom for African Americans. You know, nobody would do that, but you couldn't legally do it anyway. If you did that, it's discrimination.
Right.
And you would lose your tax-exempt status for discriminating.
Correct.
So now a man wants to come and use the women's restroom, the girls' restroom, the shower, the locker room, wants to go in overnight. You have your church taking your little girls and out or boys out to an overnight camping trip. They want to sleep in the same tent with the girls, the boy does. Or you're taking them to an overnight event and you're in a hotel or in a room. You're going to put boys here and girls there. And then the boy says, I want to sleep in the same room with the girl. And you can't say, well, no, that's girls, this is boys. We're going to put you in a separate room. Think about it. What you can't do legally regarding race, you can't do legally regarding any of these things. Whoa. So you wouldn't be able to say, we're going to have the white and the Hispanic people over here and over there, and you have a different color skin, so you can't sleep in the same hotel room with these other 4 or 5 girls. So this means that this boy can demand sleeping with these girls, and the church, the pastor, can't object, nor can the parents. And if they say no, that violates our biblical beliefs. If they say marriage is the union of a man and a woman, and somebody says that's discriminatory, he says, well, this is in the Bible. God created man and woman and brought them together for marriage. They would say that's discriminatory. You're going to be a violator. If you take those positions under this law, you will lose your tax-exempt status. And you will also, as a school, college or university, lose, in addition to tax exemption, accreditation. What does that mean? Christian schools, universities, and colleges would not be able to have student loans. Young people would not be able to get student loans to go to an unaccredited school. When they go to an unaccredited school, they would likely have a very hard time going into graduate school because most graduate schools require graduation from an accredited undergraduate school. So they would not come to the schools. It would decimate the schools. They'd have to have men in women's sports. Right now, the world record was just broken by a man in a weightlifting competition. Oh. And you know, when you're at that competitive world Olympic type level, to break another person's world record, to come in 1 pound, 2 pounds, 5 pounds, 10 pounds, that's amazing. This person broke the women's weightlifting world record by about 100 pounds.
And that was the ugliest woman I've ever seen in my life.
And then here's another woman. She's a MMA fighter. Now, I'm not, I don't watch or support MMA fighters. It's pretty brutal. But here's this woman. This is her sport, right? So she's in this sport. She's at the top of her game as a female competitor, MMA fighter. She gets into the ring with a man who says, I'm a woman. He hits her. She said, I've never been hit so hard in my life. It breaks her skull, cracks her orbital area. She has to have her skull put back together with 7 staples. She says, I've never been hit so hard. I'll never get in the ring with another man who says that he's a woman. Listen to this. Just this week, we got a call this week from a 20-something, early 20s, solid Christian young woman, bride-to-be. She's getting married in May. She goes to a store to shop for a wedding dress. The person says, this person will help you go in there and change. These wedding dresses are not easy to get in and out of. Yeah. And the mom and her sister are there for this amazing, incredible day, memorable day, shopping for her wedding dress. She's saving herself for her husband. She doesn't want to get undressed in front of a man. Right. She's saving herself, and she has all of her young life for her husband. And that day's coming up in May. So this just happened a few days ago. So she's in there, and she said the Spirit just gave her an uncomfortable feeling. But this person's dressed in a tight dress, black heels, ponytail, with a mask on. So you can't really see the full face. So she has this feeling that something's wrong. And this person's undressing her, dressing her, touching her private parts as she's doing this. And she's in there with this person. And then she goes out and she talks to her mom and dad, her mom and her sister. And her sister says, don't go back in there. She says, come here, come back here. And she said, do you know that person is a man? She said, how do you know that? I've had a funny feeling. She said, he's got a male Adam's apple. So they confronted him, and sure enough, this was a man. This was a man undressing this woman. She went home. She says that day, that happy day, was violated. She felt violated.
Yes.
And she went home, told her fiance. Fiance comes and tells the store manager, what are you doing? You've broken our trust. Why would you put my fiance in here with a man? And the store manager says, well, he says he identifies as a woman, and we have to do that. That would be commonplace, Cheryl. That would be the law.
Yeah.
Here's another thing, one more thing. It also bans change counsel. Now, we've been litigating this ban in California when it first came out in 2012.
Yes.
We have young people that have, we have a young person that we represented And we just won a big case in Florida on this issue where a city and county banned change counsel. What is change counsel? Change counsel is anybody who comes to a counselor and says, look, I'm having these struggles with unwanted same-sex attraction, or I'm engaging in these unwanted same-sex behaviors, or I'm having confusion. Am I a boy? Am I a girl? And I need help because this conflicts with my values. Can you help me? And the counselor talks through this process and helps them reach their objective. Look, counselors are like a GPS. You get in the car. GPS doesn't tell you where to go. Counselor doesn't tell you where to go. Counselor's there, listening to you. You tell the GPS where you want to go. The GPS then maneuvers you through traffic and helps you get to your destination. Now, what if you got in your car, you punched in the destination, and there's only one destination, that every time you punch it in, instead of taking you to your destination, it takes you around a circle and goes back 180 degrees away from the destination. But you can never get it to reach the destination.
That's a good analogy.
And counselors are like a GPS. You go in there, they listen. What's your problem? What's your stress? These are life-saving opportunities because some of these people are on the verge of suicide. They're having these struggles.
Right.
They don't like it. Now, they go to a counselor to get help. This person said he was on the verge of suicide, but he went to a counselor and he found help. And his life was changed. We have so many that happen like that. Under this law, you cannot have that counsel anymore across the country. And it's not just for minors, it's for everybody from age 1 all the way to 99, 100 plus. And it applies not just to licensed counselors, to unlicensed counselors. So when you're sitting in a private room with your pastor and an associate pastor there, and you're sharing these struggles and you're asking for help, the pastor, Cheryl, you as a pastor, if you were to counsel that person about the power of Jesus Christ to free them,
I could be sued too.
you would be sued by the Department of Justice of the United States of America and anybody else. And if that's your position as a pastor in a church, then you're going to lose your tax-exempt status. Not just your federal tax-exempt status, that'll also affect your state and property tax exemption as well.
Right.
This is how radical this is. This is why it's so dangerous. And this is why we created a website, lc.org, just the letter lc.org.
Yes, it's on the screen if they'll put it on
Right
the
there,
screen
yeah,
for you.
lc.org/HR5 has a lot of information. But here's what we have to have people do, because it's right now in the Senate.
Listen up, listen up. This is what we have to do.
You need to fax. We have an opportunity to fax the senators right now.
Yeah.
Sign a petition. We've already delivered, 755,000.
And all this is at that website.
It's all at the website. It's all there. Fax, sign the petition, and then call. You can also have a place where you can plug in, and this is for people around the country. They can find out who your senators are, and you can call them right there. It's all at...
Call your senators. Did you hear that? Yeah. Call your senators.
Now,
we have people watching from all over.
Now, yeah, all over. And so why do we fax? Because the faxes can't be turned off by the senators. So they're 24/7. We had a senator one time, or a member of Congress one time, said, "Can you call off your people?" Said, "You just broke our fax machine with 11,000 faxes." We had one person last year. This was 2020. We said, we wanted to get more signatures on the Born Alive Infant Protection Act to protect the lives of babies when they're born alive, right? Thank you. And we had this person. He was of a particular party, and we said, and so we had him on the list to fax. He called us up. "Can you call off the faxes? We can't get any work done." And he said, "I'm with you." And we said, "That's great to hear that. I'm glad that you support the Born Alive. But your name's not on there as a co-sponsor. So as soon as you put your name on there, we'll call off our people."
There you go.
You know what he did? He changed parties. I'm not kidding you.
Really?
He changed political parties. And you know what he did as one of his first acts, the first week he changed parties? He co-sponsored the Born Alive Infant Protection Act.
Praise God.
Because
that's what pressure
he
does.
was getting a lot of pressure from his party.
Yeah.
You better not put your name on this bill that protects children after they're actually born.
Yeah, see, this is what it's coming to. Faith without works is dead. It's not productive. We've got to put our faith to action. And now's the time to act, because how soon do you think the senators will vote on this?
we just had the Senator Schumer, who, by the way, was the sponsor of the Religious Freedom Restoration Act that now wants to repeal the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. We just had him do what's called a Rule 14, which means that this bill can come up at any time. Now here's the situation. In the Senate, there's a special rule called the filibuster rule. So if somebody objects, you need 60 votes. There are not 60 votes in the Senate to pass this bill. The people that are supporting this, they know it. So here's what they're going to do. At 2 a.m. in the morning on Saturday, just this past Saturday, the House sent over to the Senate the budget bill.
Right.
There's a handful of bills that only require in the Senate majority vote. They're not subject to the filibuster rule. The budget is one of those. It's now in the Senate. What Senator Schumer just did is invoke a rule that means this bill, H.R. 5, the Equality Act, coming over from the House, can be brought up at any time, and it doesn't have to go through committees. What? And so what happens is, as they're voting on the budget, they're going to try to put this into the budget so that they can only pass it by a majority vote. So we're working with a group of senators that know the seriousness of this, and they know that they have to be on the floor every minute of the day. So even this is how it would work.
Through the night.
Through the night. It could be until the gavel actually pounds at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning when that day's session is over. And then it starts the next day when the session starts again until the gavel pounds again at the end of that session. Could be midnight, could be 4 a.m. in the morning, however long the session goes. And here's what happens, because we've seen this happen before when they knew they couldn't pass something in the Senate. It happened a couple years ago that they actually passed a vote that required the majority. It was one of these budget-type bills. And then as the senators are walking out to do press conferences, go home, go back to their offices, and the floor is pretty much empty, but there's still some people there. So the 100 people are not there. The 100 senators are not there. Just a handful of people there. Somebody then says, I want to do a voice vote on this particular bill.
Dear God.
Now, if nobody's there to say, I object, then that bill can be passed by a handful of people.
Yeah.
No.
By the majority of a handful of people.
No.
And so these senators that know the threat are having to stake out every minute of every day until the gavel is pounded and the lights are turned off so they can finally go home to be with their families.
So we need to pray for those senators.
Yeah, because if they're not there to object, this thing could be snuck in. If they're there to object, then we've saved another day. But then it starts the next day. And it goes over and over again until we finish, get this, the 117th Congress, about 2 years.
Jeez.
So this is a battle that is so critical. They know the importance of it. They need to have our prayers because this is a grueling thing.
Yes, it is.
To be on guard all the time.
Yes.
And to make sure you're there and you're awake and you object, to guard that Senate floor every minute, every second of the day until the gavel is pounded, the lights are off, and you start it again the very next day. And you can go through the weekends and they can drag you through holidays and all kinds
Are there
of things.
any Democrats that are movable to our side on this issue?
Well,
Are reasonable?
in the House, it was unanimously passed by the Democrats and 3 Republicans.
Dear God.
In the Senate, we don't know yet, but we do know when it came up the last time, which was 2019, it would have been a lockstep Democrat with a couple of Republicans, and they had, at that time, we counted about 47 votes. Now, it's very close, but I think that with all of this going on, we are praying that we could get some Democrats because, look, there are some Democrats like Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia.
Yeah, where's he?
And he, I think, is one that we could ultimately bring with us on here because this is a pro-abortion bill as well.
Yes.
This is abortion from fertilization until birth, removing all restrictions. And Joe Manchin's not that radical on those issues.
Right.
And then also, look, a lot of these senators were around in 1993 when they voted for the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, and now they're being asked to jettison it. And so I think we can get a few, but it's going to be a real battle, and we can't.
Their ultimate goal is to silence the church.
No question about it. The goal is to ultimately, you're talking about cancel culture? Mm-hmm. This is canceling the church. Look, yes. We've been in litigation since March of 2020 on behalf of pastors and churches. We never would have thought so quickly, but certainly in America, that pastors would be arrested for opening up their church. We never would have thought, like in California, that church goers would also face criminal charges for attending church, even one or two people.
And singing.
And singing. And the criminal charge, Cheryl, is a year in prison and daily fines. We never would have thought that. And what we've seen are these states where the governor is radically pro-abortion, is also anti-religious freedom and anti-church. Yeah. So what you see here is this radical pro-abortion, abortion through all 9 months with no restrictions, and then taking religious freedom away so that you can target the church and all the schools, pre-K on up. Listen, if your church has a daycare or a care opportunity for little children while the parents are worshiping, if you have somebody that says, you know what, and if you find out later or you know at the time that they're sexually attracted to children, if you say, no, I'm not going to hire you or I'm going to remove you, that's discrimination under this bill. Yeah. So this is to cancel the church. So what we've been litigating to free up the Church of Jesus Christ, and we've had success at the Supreme Court several times, but it's still in process. They're still trying to cancel the church. This actually takes it to a whole nother level. It is because it involves pastors. So, like I said, Cheryl, even people that are not licensed counselors, but they're doing counseling, professional or not, pastors or not, you're covered. So it doesn't matter if somebody comes in and they talk to you or to Pastor Steve or any pastor, and you share with them the power of Jesus Christ through the Holy Spirit, the power of the Spirit to just free them from the chains that are binding them. You see somebody weeping across the desk or the chair from you. They're weeping and they're struggling, and you're going to help them, no question. But if you do, you get the United States government. It would be the United States of America versus Word of Faith, versus Cheryl Ingram, versus Pastor Steve Ingram.
And they have unlimited resources, unlimited funds to do whatever.
Yeah, so that's why this bill is so unbelievable.
So this is why we need to take action now. And we're going to wrap this up right now, Brother Staver, and he is a pastor too, you know, by the way, as well as an attorney. So he has a pastor's heart, and he gets it. We need to take action now. So we're going to ask you to go to the website again. That's lc.org/HR5 and fax to your senators. That's very, very important.